When we last saw the Gregory party aboard the stolen Euclidean submarine, their position was anything but a happy one. Compelled to anchor the submarine on the floor of the ocean in 9,000 feet of water, Joan soon discovers that the Euclideans have located them even there. As Captain Bradford engages in two-way radio communication with Johnson in Los Angeles, the scientists on the Magic Island send out a radio beam of such power as to nearly cripple the submarine. Then the Euclideans send out a musical note, keyed to a certain pitch, and Jerry Hall gets a severe headache. Mrs. Gregory watches helplessly as they plan to run the risk of capture in a desperate dash to Los Angeles.
Well, of all the crazy things I ever heard of, this is the worst. We have to run to Los Angeles to get away from a musical note that makes my headache sent over the radio.
It is not that particular note we must fear, Jerry. I can protect you in the soundproof sleeping section in the stern of the submarine. What we must guard against is the note which will cause this submarine to break up.
But how can we guard against such a thing?
If we are quick enough, we may quite possibly save the boat, though its operation may be far from perfect thereafter.
Well, never mind the boat. How about our operation?
We will not be harmed if I act quickly enough.
Oh, Joan, dear, what must you think of us? You must do this, and you must do that, while we sit helplessly by and watch you save us time and time again.
Because, Mother, I am the only one who understands all these devices the Euclideans use. And because I understand how to operate this submarine to the best advantage, to prevent the Euclideans successfully attacking us.
But isn't there something we could be doing, Joan?
Yes. If you will do as I tell you, Captain Bradford, and you also, Mother, you can assist greatly.
Oh, of course, Joan, dear. We'll be only too glad to do as you direct, won't we, Ted?
Absolutely. We're in your hands, Joan, and your orders will be the law here.
Me too.
You will remain with me, Jerry.
Oh, then I'm going to help you with something up here, huh?
No, I want you near me so that I may keep you out of trouble.
I guess that takes care of you, Jerry.
Sure looks like it.
Never mind, Jerry. If Joan is taking care of you, you're in good hands.
What do we do, Joan?
You will go to the soundproof section in the extreme stern.
Back where the sleeping quarters are, dear?
Further back. Just behind the sleeping quarters, you will find another of the transparent steel doors. Open it. Enter the small chamber there and remove everything that is not permanently fastened to the floor and walls of the compartment.
What do we do with these things?
Bring them forward into the sleeping compartment at once and fasten them down to the best of your ability.
Is that all, Joan?
Yes, that is all. I will find something with which to occupy Jerry while you are gone.
Are you sure you understand exactly what's expected of us, Ted?
All we have to do is to clean everything movable out of the stern section.
Well, do you know why we're doing this?
No, and it didn't seem like the time to ask questions.
Well?
Yes?
Huh?
What?
What do I do?
Listen.
Listen?
Yes, listen attentively.
Okay. I don't hear anything.
I did not mean for you to listen to sounds in general.
I'm not. I'm listening to the absence of sound in general.
My meaning was quite clear, Jerry. You are to listen to what I have to say.
Well, guess I can't help myself. Go ahead.
We are going to undertake a very dangerous experiment.
That won't be anything new for this trip.
This will be the first time we have deliberately created a dangerous situation for ourselves.
Oh, yeah? I suppose when we stole this submarine, we created a picnic for ourselves.
Jerry, if you persist in misunderstanding me, it will be useless to attempt to explain my plan to you.
Well, sorry, Joan. Go to it.
I am confident that our only immediate danger lies in the possibility of Octavo discovering the musical note which will set up vibrations within the structure of this boat. Vibrations sufficiently strong to shatter it.
Yeah, I guess he can do that all right. But I don't see how we're going to know when he's found it until it's too late.
We will have to move quite rapidly. You must know that to respond to a note in the musical scale, either the common scale or the wider ranges of sound, the entire construction of an object must be focused at one central point.
Oh, I know that. Like the keystone in the arch of a bridge.
Exactly. And this submarine will also be found to have a keystone, not placed as one nor appearing as one. But somewhere in everything built by the hand of man, there is one important point, one vital point which will respond to a certain musical note.
Now, I understand that. And I understand when old Octavo finds a note that fits this sub, G-47 will broadcast that note in our beam, and this boat will fall to pieces.
That is the possibility.
Uh-huh. Swell idea. And when this sub cracks up, we're left to swim under 1.5 miles of ocean water.
You cannot swim under 1.5 miles of water.
I know it. That's what's worrying me.
If my plan is successful, we will remain within the boat.
Well, that won't be much fun after the boat smashes around us.
The boat will not, as you say, smash around us.
Well, if you can figure how to keep us dry after our boat leaves us on the bottom of the ocean, hurry up and tell me.
I asked Mother and Captain Bradford to remove everything from that stern ballast section for a definite reason.
Oh, I thought maybe you just wanted to give them something to do.
It will also serve that purpose. However, I want that section cleared so that we may drop it off without losing any of our supplies.
Drop it off?
Precisely.
Drop off the tail of the submarine?
It is so constructed as to permit that.
But can we still run it and steer it just as well?
We may continue to operate the boat, and our speed will be appreciably increased, though the loss of the stern stabilizing pins will render accurate navigation difficult.
Oh, that's nice. We'll go faster, but we can't steer the blame thing, huh? Won't we have a lot of fun zigzagging around, cutting the tops off submerged islands?
I will guarantee to keep the boat free of any such obstruction.
But what good will it do us to lose the tail of this thing? Old Octavo isn't shooting his musical note at the stern. He's aiming for the keynote of this boat, and that's probably near the center of it.
Precisely. And my plan is this. Octavo will find that note without doubt, and possibly find it very soon, as he must have been experimenting all through the hours since we left the island. When he finds it, it will be sent out on our course.
And we'll start to shake ourselves out of this floating target.
Yes. We will feel the vibrations before they cause any appreciable damage. And the instant we are conscious of the action of the musical beam, I will pull this lever. That will drop the stern section off, and we will be safe.
Well, maybe you can see it.
You should see it also. It is very simple.
Okay, I'm simple then, but I still don't see it.
By dropping that section, we change the entire construction of this boat. We change the Newtonian base.
The what?
The Newtonian base. Have you never heard of that?
Well, afraid not.
Jerry, is it possible that in your world a young man may reach the age of 16 without learning of Sir Isaac Newton?
Oh, sure, I know all about Newton. He used to sleep under apple trees. One day an apple fell on his head and he figured out the law of gravity.
The story of the apple is probably fallacious. However, it is Newton's law to which I refer. The Newtonian base is the center of gravity.
Oh, all right. We'll argue about that some other time. I know what you mean, anyhow. When you drop off the tail section, you change the center of gravity of this boat. And that changes the musical note, which will wreck the boat.
That is a crude explanation, but if you understand it, that will suffice.
Well, go on. When you change the center of gravity, you mix old Octavo all up. And then he's got to spend some more hours making noises with glasses of water until he finds a new musical note which they can broadcast to wreck us.
That is it. Our safety depends on my ability to recognize the vibrations of the destructive beam the instant they strike us, and to distort them by losing the stern section.
Well, do we have to open the receiving side of this radio set to hear the beam coming?
It would be very simple if we could do that. Unfortunately, the note which will strike the vital center of this boat will be of such high frequency that the ear will not detect it.
Well, if we can't hear this thing coming, what can we do about it?
I've explained that over and over, Jerry. We will feel the vibrations. The submarine will actually start to break up, and then I will drop the stern section.
That's going to make it mighty close figuring. But if that's the best we can do, well, it's the best we can do.
Mother and the captain are coming.
Then they must have finished cleaning house back there.
I think we removed everything from that section.
Yeah, I know we did. We've got everything that wasn't part of the boat.
That is well. Now, if you will take your station and lock the safety devices on the steel chair.
Well, what's going to happen, Joan?
Get yourself anchored in that seat, Pat, and Joan can tell us what she has in mind.
I've secured my life belt.
I'm tied in.
Me too.
Excellent. Now, as I have explained to Jerry, we may expect an attempt to destroy this submarine any moment, any second. And when this attempt is made, the first indication of it will be a series of sharp and violent vibrations. We must be prepared to remain in our places and make no false moves. I will quickly cut off that stern section, thus changing the center of attraction in this boat and saving us from destruction.
Oh, we hope.
But, Joan, if you are afraid the Euclideans are going to send a destructive radio beam, and our safety can be assured by dropping that stern section, why wait until they start sending out this beam?
This will be a constant musical note, Mother. And I am basing my plan of escape on the belief that Octavo is working to find the note which will destroy this boat as it now stands. If we were to change our structure before he strikes, he would know it instantly and would set about making ready to attack us as a smaller unit.
Well, that's sensible enough, Joan. Once he has sent out his constant note tuned to the sub, and you have thrown him out of range by dropping that section, he will be forced to start his experiments all over again, giving us at least a few hours in which to run for home.
Precisely, Captain.
You sure understand easy enough, Tex.
Well, I have studied the destructive power of the musical note.
You and I seem to be the only ones completely in the dark on this, Jerry.
Sure looks like it, Mrs. Gregory. But if Joan and the captain know everything, we don't have to worry about knowing anything.
Silence.
Golly whiskers! Joan, you did it.
Good work, Joan. You saved the submarine.
Oh, Joan, that was wonderful. The boat was being shaken to pieces.
We were very near destruction for a few seconds. Now we are free. And as it should take Octavo several hours to find a new note for this smaller shell, we will utilize those hours by shooting to the surface and racing for Los Angeles.
Well, can you handle the boat now?
It will be difficult. Remain strapped in your seats. I will refuel with a double charge. We will travel vertically.
You mean you'll shoot this sub straight up through 1.5 miles of water?
Precisely.
Boy, oh boy! Everybody hold on tight. We're going straight up.
Now the race for freedom is on in earnest. With Joan Gregory at the controls, the stolen Euclidean submarine is driving at full speed for the surface of the ocean. And that full speed is terrific. The submarine is capable of making over 40 miles an hour underwater. And added to this is the change in water pressure, which aids in shooting the boat straight up, almost as fast as a bullet shot out of a gun. Jerry, Mrs. Gregory, and the captain are excited by this ride and perhaps a little nervous. But they appear to be quite comfortable as they sit in their swinging steel chairs, securely fastened with safety belts. Joan is giving them some last-minute instructions as the submarine nears the surface.
As we prepare to level off near the surface, you will all be subjected to a sudden change of direction and of position. Do not allow yourselves to relax in those chairs. Brace your feet and hands firmly and remain rigidly a part of the structure of this submarine until I order otherwise.
Okay, Joan. I'll hang on to everything.
Aren't we in danger of bursting out of the water with such a force as to strain this boat to the breaking point?
Well, I think so. After all, you can't rush straight up through 9,000 feet of water and shoot out into the air without some action.
We will not leave the water entirely. I shall level off at 10 fathoms, and the remaining water will act as a cushion, breaking our rise gradually until we reach 6 fathoms. We will then proceed at that level.
Well, the air pressure inside this thing won't change, and if we can keep from getting thrown out of these steel chairs, I guess we'll still be here when we come out on top.
We are not coming out on top, and you know it.
Jerry meant when we level off, Joan.
We have no time for further discussion now. We are nearly to 10 fathoms. Hold your stations. Brace yourselves well, and do not move until I give you permission.
Aye, aye,
Joan.
Skipper.
Now speak.
I don't think I can speak.
You just did, Jerry.
Oh, then I can.
Well, Jerry, I too am surprised to learn that I can.
That was about the wildest bit of sailing I've ever gone through. Are we safely leveled off at 6 fathoms now?
We are, and proceeding along our course to Los Angeles.
Hey, we're not riding any too well.
That's to be expected, isn't it, Joan, with that stern section off?
Yes, Captain Bradford. Our sailing will be very rough at all times now. The submarine is hard to control without the stern stabilizing pins.
We're certainly flopping around like goldfish in a bowl, but we seem to be making good time.
The vibration is not as great at this speed as it would be at a lower rate.
Then, for heaven's sake, don't slow down.
Are you uncomfortable, Mother?
I've really been more at ease a number of times, Joan, but I can stand it if the rest of you can.
When I think that we're getting away from that island, I can't imagine anything I couldn't stand.
That goes for me, too. Hey, Joan, how about using our radio now?
It would not be advisable. I hope that G-47 and Staley's will suppose this boat to be destroyed. And in their excitement, it is barely possible the scientists in the transmission chambers on Euclidia have failed to note our movement on their prism reflectors.
Well, I don't think those Euclideans ever miss anything.
They will probably locate us within a very short time.
But they won't be able to reach us with anything, will they, Joan?
Not to my knowledge. Though it is quite possible that G-47 did not let me see everything there was to be seen on Euclidia. There were secret chambers where only a few of the greatest scientists went.
What about this man who succeeded in getting to Johnson at our radio set? Bailey. What would he be doing in America?
Acting as a Euclidean spy and learning what new developments in science were being used.
Would he be in constant communication with the island?
To be sure he would.
But how could he send messages to them? He'd have to have a radio set somewhere in the States, and his messages would be picked up all over the world.
He would be operating on a frequency which no worldly station could pick up, as you call it, Jerry.
Is that going on all the time, all over the world?
Euclidia has many agents, that I know, and their reports come in a constant stream to the island. But it is most unusual for a scientist as great as Thales to leave the island. Such work is usually delegated to minor scientists.
Looks like old G-47 figures we're pretty big stuff.
Big stuff?
Jerry is off on one of his non-English speaking tours. But he meant that we must be important enemies if Thales would personally set about to make trouble for us.
What do you suppose he could have done to Johnson?
Probably nothing at all. Certainly he will not have harmed him.
What makes you so sure of that?
Thales would know of some way to keep Mr. Johnson quiet for some time without hurting him. It is a strict policy with G-47 to have his agents refrain from creating disturbances.
Well, I'll bet he didn't take that radio set away from Johnson without creating something. I saw Johnson once myself, and he's a pretty husky-looking fellow.
I think you'll find you're mistaken this time, Joan.
In what way, Mother?
Johnson would protect us with his life if necessary, and he would have to put up a struggle before turning that radio set over to an agent of Euclidia.
That's right, Joan.
I imagine that Johnson and Thales have never seen each other.
You
will all remain silent.
No,
I said if you
Joan,
will all remain silent.
Well,
thank you. I will attempt to explain.
I wish you would.
we heard Johnson's voice over the radio, and then the reception became very poor. The radio sounded as if it had been knocked over or broken or something.
Yes, and then Johnson said that danger threatened him, and that the radio had been tampered with.
There's no other way to figure it, Joan. Thales was standing right over Johnson when he sent that message.
I know you are wrong, and I will prove it.
Well, you'll sure have to. Hey, hold this thing still.
That was a bad one.
Oh, it felt as if the boat were turning around.
We did waver slightly from our true axis course.
Wave slightly? Huh. I get tossed around like a canoe in a storm, and we wave slightly.
We are riding easily now, Jerry.
Well, go on with your explanation about Johnson and Thales.
Johnson did not say that danger threatened him. He said danger threatened our plan.
Why, yes, Joan, that's true.
And furthermore, Johnson did not sound as if he were engaging in a struggle. The radio was becoming uncertain, but Johnson's voice quality or his relation to the microphone did not change.
Say, I guess it didn't at that.
You were right so far, Joan. Go on.
You have progressed far enough with your own experiments, Captain Bradford, to realize that it would be a very simple matter to place a destructive solvent in Johnson's radio. A solvent which would be released and flow through the set, quickly ruining it.
Yes, that wouldn't be hard. And a clever man could find a chance to get into the radio room and do that.
But if Thales wasn't there with Johnson, how could he release this solvent just at the right moment to interrupt Johnson's message to us?
Yeah, that's what I'd like to know. Why, he might have planned that stuff in the radio hours before it was used. And Johnson could have sent plenty of other messages.
Agreed. But I believe that Thales was listening constantly to Johnson's station at his own powerful equipment not far off. And when Johnson was talking to us, Thales allowed him to talk just long enough to trace the beam to our exact location and report that to Euclidia, which would take very few seconds. Then he would cut in on Johnson's wavelength, reverse his powerful beam, and release the destructive material he had placed in your set at Los Angeles.
Why, Joan, that's fantastic. Reversing a radio beam to destroy a set?
Euclideans have done it often successfully.
Boy, that's the best one yet.
Yes, but it's also one of the easiest ones to perform. Don't forget that explosives are set off by radio in daily experiments all over the world.
I'm not questioning the Euclideans' ability to do this, but we've had so many of these experiences that it seems almost more than a person can stand.
Oh, cheer up, Mrs. Gregory. We'll catch this fellow Thales when we get back home.
What is the population of Los Angeles?
Well, with Hollywood and the suburban communities, it's roughly 2 million.
Then your chances of laying hands on Thales are 1 in 2 million, if he is in Los Angeles.
You know, there must be plenty of easy jobs in this world. Why do we always pick all the hard ones?
I like hard jobs, Jerry. They're the most interesting. And after you make good on something difficult, you may honestly feel that you've really accomplished something.
Yes, and we've sure done that. Only a few short weeks ago, we left Los Angeles in search of Joan. And now Joan is skippering us back at the controls of a stowed Euclidean submarine.
This will be considered an important adventure in your world, then?
It better be. I want to see my picture on page 1 of every newspaper in the country.
I'm sure you'll get your wish, Jerry. But when your picture has been on page 1 as many times as mine, you'll get a little tired of it.
They'll be taking your picture also, Joan.
I should like that. I have never seen my picture.
Of course you have, dear. Don't you remember the picture I showed you the day I found you?
But I was only a year old when that picture was taken. I am now 15 years. Surely I do not look the same.
I'll say you don't.
Oh, Joan, dear. That was dangerous, wasn't it?
No, Mother. Uncomfortable, possibly.
Possibly nothing. Uncomfortably, for sure.
Joan, there's something I don't quite understand about these sudden wild swings the stern of the boat makes.
What is that, Captain?
Well, when we're running along at constant speed, the gas combustion chamber makes hardly a sound. But when the stern of this thing whips around out of control, there's a heavy burst that sounds like escaping air. How do you account for that?
Quite easily. When the stern is suddenly thrown around out of balance, and it will be so repeatedly without the stern section, when that occurs, the speed of the rear sections of the boat is so great during the short arc of movement that the gas bursting from the combustion chamber is actually going into a vacuum created by the boat.
No wonder I don't feel so good when those things happen. If we're flapping around fast enough to leave a hole in the water behind us.
Joan, is it safe for me to return to the sleeping quarters and lie down?
Of course, Mother.
Pat, are you ill?
Of course I'm not ill. Only I think I'll rest a little.
You look kind of white around the mouth, Mrs. Gregory. Are you seasick?
Seasick? Oh, not after 15 years on the water in my own boat, but I think I'll go.
What is the matter with Mother?
She is seasick, Joan, though she wouldn't admit it for the world.
What is seasick?
Well, it's something that happens to a lot of people on the water, but, well, it never happened to me. Oh!
What's the matter, Jerry?
Well, I think I'll take a little rest, if you don't need me right here now.
Poor Jerry. This is the first time I've ever seen him act like that. Well, Joan, it looks as if you and I are the only 2 real sailors on this submarine.
But it is so foolish to act as Mother and Jerry are acting. Captain, is there a mist or a fog in this boat?
Why, no, Joan. The air's clear as a bell in here.
That is strange. My vision is impaired. I have never felt just like this before. What could be the matter with me?
Well, I could tell you, Joan, but I'll let you guess. That leaves one good sailor. Joan, you better go back with the others and lie down. If I should happen to find that I'm no stronger than the rest of you, I don't want anyone here to laugh at me.
The stolen Euclidean submarine is still racing for Los Angeles. Hour after hour, the powerful explosions of compressed gas have driven the speedy boat on toward its goal. It is now noon, and a blazing summer sun is beating down on the waters of the Pacific Ocean. The submarine is very near the surface of the water, and in the control section, Captain Bradford, Mrs. Gregory, Jerry and Joan are discussing a shadow on the water directly above them.
I don't like the looks of that shadow.
The shadow is harmless.
Sure, but what's making the shadow?
Looks to me like a good-sized plane, and a plane flying not any too high.
That is precisely what casts the shadow.
One of the Euclidean planes?
Undoubtedly. That is one of the planes from the island, and the pilot is very carefully keeping his shadow directly over us at all times.
Oh, then maybe that shadow can hurt us.
Now, Jerry, you've been around that magic island so long you're imagining things.
Well, what's that shadow doing there, then, if it's not for our benefit?
The shadow is probably kept over us for a definite reason. The pilot of the Euclidean plane knows that while we are conscious of his proximity, we are less likely to attempt communication with the shore.
But we'll have to communicate with the shore in a few hours now, won't we?
It is quite possible we will attempt to land without any communication to the shore.
But, Joan, we've told you that it's out of the question. You simply can't land a strange submarine, particularly one carrying as many unique weapons as this one, without getting yourself thoroughly put in jail.
And they'll do it, too. I think we ought to let them know we're coming.
Well, I don't. We'd never get anything accomplished if the waterfront found out what was going on.
We are now passing Point Loma.
Point Loma? Just off San Diego?
So soon, Joan?
We are making good speed, Captain Bradford. We will reach Los Angeles Harbor in slightly more than 2 hours.
Gee whiz. Point Loma. I wish the Coast Guard over there in San Diego knew what was going on. Boy, what they wouldn't do to that plane over us.
The thought makes it seem almost worthwhile to try letting them know we're out here.
Too risky, Pat. Though it would seem mighty good to know those Coast Guard boys were rolling that big plane of theirs down the ramp.
I think it would be foolish. We must proceed to Los Angeles at once.
Couldn't we go up on the surface just long enough to open the observation hatch and take a look at the shoreline?
Homesick, Jerry?
Oh, maybe I am. A little.
What is homesick?
Don't you feel homesick for the Magic Island, Joan?
I do not know what homesick is, so I cannot tell whether I feel it or not. But I do not feel at all ill, so I presume I do not feel homesick.
Gee, that's funny. She don't even know what homesick is.
I'm not sure that it's very funny, Jerry. Think of not having any place you cared enough for to be homesick.
Gosh, that wouldn't be so good.
What is homesick?
Homesickness, my dear, is the lost, lonesome feeling a person gets when he's been too long away from his home and his loved ones.
Then why should I be homesick? I like very much to be here with all of you, and you have told me that my home is with you, Mother. How can I be homesick when I am going toward my home?
Well, that's a good way to figure it, Joan. But I'm afraid most of us would have a little more trouble than that trying to talk ourselves out of a spell of homesickness.
Well, it won't be long now. We'll soon be outside harbor at Los Angeles.
And that will mean we'll soon be in great danger.
I agree with you, Pat. I think it's time we made our plans.
We are in danger now, constant danger, and planning is useless until we are familiar with conditions at Los Angeles.
Hey,
What is it, Jerry?
I just thought of something.
Something important to this landing of ours?
I think it is.
Then let us hear it.
That Euclidean plane flying around up there.
He's not going to do anything to us.
Maybe not, but there's something mighty mysterious about that plane.
Well, in what way, Jerry?
Well, how does he get by with flying along at that altitude? He can't be more than 1,000 feet above the water. You know, plenty of people can see him from land, and they can tell that it isn't no ordinary plane. Not only that, but we've passed under 2 big squadrons of Navy planes, and they couldn't help but see him.
Why, you're right, Jerry. And surely anyone flying near that plane and seeing how it was made would be curious about it.
I think the plane has not been seen.
Boy, it must have been seen, Joan. Jerry's given you good reasons why it couldn't miss being seen.
The plane is probably invisible.
Invisible?
Now, Joan, your voice was as loud as any other in telling us that there isn't any magic on Euclidia. And an invisible plane sounds like magic to me.
Me, too.
You found the magic island invisible, didn't you?
Huh?
Well, yes, we did. That is, it was invisible to our eyes, simply because it was surrounded with that bank of artificial fog.
Exactly. And if we were on the surface, we could look up and see a large gray cloud flying steadily along over us.
That Euclidean plane is hidden in a cloud, an artificial cloud generated by the plane and thrown out around it?
Precisely.
Every time I learn one more of the things those Euclideans can do, I wonder a little more just how we're going to come out when we really mix with them.
Well, it won't be easy, Jerry.
I'll say it won't.
But even though the plane is invisible for all practical purposes, it does cast a shadow. Surely someone must have seen shadow on the water.
If it was seen from another plane, the pilot might think it was the shadow from his own. And a boat would not notice it unless the shadow passed directly over the boat. We know the shadow has not done that, for we have not passed directly under a boat.
Then, barring some unusual and unlikely accident, that plane will have no trouble following us right into the harbor.
Looks that way, Pat.
Boy, there'd sure be something doing inside that plane if another pilot took a notion to fly through there.
That would be unfortunate.
At least that, my dear.
I think we'd better stop speculating as to what might happen to somebody else if they flew into a cloud and start figuring what's liable to happen to us when we get into port.
Well, we can't figure anything until we get there, can we?
That is correct, Jerry. Planning would be useless without knowledge of local conditions at our destination.
But how are we going to land, Joan?
I have told you, Mother. We will use individual airlocks and leave the submarine anchored at the 10-fathom level.
We're going to unload from this barge 60 feet below the water level and walk into the harbor?
That is the general idea.
It don't sound any too good to me.
Well, Joan must know what she's talking about, Jerry, or she wouldn't suggest such a thing.
Well, I haven't heard enough of the story to make it sound right.
You have given me little opportunity of telling you anything.
Well, what about all the hours we just sat here and hung on while we plowed up most of the Pacific Ocean?
Well, Joan has been mighty busy all the time, Jerry. Don't forget that she's the only one who really understands this submarine. And we've been depending on her for all our navigation.
Well, I know that. But she means I talk too much.
Do you not?
Well, maybe I do.
Don't feel badly about it, Jerry. We all talk too much at times. And I agree with you that now is the time to make what decisions we can about our landing at home.
Joan is absolutely right when she says that we must leave the sub submerged, safely beyond the harbor, and safely below any possible accidental discovery from the surface.
Correct, Captain.
And as I understand it, you know exactly how to get us safely from that submarine to the surface of the water and then into the harbor?
I will see that we float safely on the surface of the water. You will be responsible for our landing in the harbor.
I knew there was a catch in this somewhere.
Now, Jerry.
Oh, sorry.
Joan, dear, do you realize that we will probably be anchored out too far to swim in comfortably? And that there's no way to arrange for anyone to meet us unless we send them a radio message.
We may have to use the radio as a last resort.
And that will let the Euclideans know exactly where we've anchored this sub.
Well, what do we care if they get the boat? Just so we get out of it first.
I'd like to be able to dry dock this boat, let our Navy men take it apart. They might learn a lot of things that the governments of the world should know.
I think we will be able to lay our plans when the time comes. For the moment, I have a far greater problem facing me.
What's that?
This submarine is no longer swaying around. The stern is perfectly stable.
I noticed that.
So did I, but I thought it was purely accidental. I like it. Is there more to it, Joan?
I believe there is. We are being held on our course.
Held on our course. From some outside source of power?
It would appear so.
But what kind of power could do that?
I fear I know the answer.
You fear you know the answer.
Yes, Mother. But I will withhold it until I am certain.
Well, now, look here, Joan. We're not children, any of us. If you know something we will have to find out eventually, why not tell us now? Perhaps we can help you work it out.
Sure. Everything that's happened to us so far has come out all right.
I think the men are right, dear. What is it?
We are rapidly losing our forward speed.
We're slowing up?
Observe the speed as indicated on the instrument.
Well, it seems that we're only making 35 knots now, and the needle is gradually dropping off.
Precisely.
Are we running out of fuel, Joan?
Definitely no.
Then what's holding us back?
You have hit it very accurately, Jerry. We are being held back.
But that doesn't make sense, Joan. What could hold this submarine back?
Magnetism?
Magnetism. That sounds like another trick of the Euclideans.
Without doubt, it is the work of G47 and his scientists.
But how could they reach us?
Joan, look. That speed indicator has fallen off to 30 knots.
It will not fall below that speed, I think.
You seem quite certain what is taking place, Joan.
I am almost sure. One moment more, and I will know.
One moment. Is something going to happen to us?
Nothing more than is happening now. Captain Bradford, you are a navigator. Will you look at my compass?
Why, sure, Joan, but... Oh.
Huh? What'd you see, Tex?
This compass is pointing due south, and we're running due north. Every instrument on this board is paralyzed, and every needle that is near enough the horizontal to swing free is pointing south.
Then the Euclideans are using magnetism on us. They're sending out magnetic beams from that island to hold us back.
I don't believe it. Even on the Magic Island, they haven't got strong enough magnetic powers for that. Oh, maybe they could pull the compass around, but they sure couldn't hold the submarine back.
Correct, Jerry. It is not being done from the island, but it is the work of the Euclideans.
From that Euclidean plane flying over us?
No, Pat. Wait a minute. I think I've got it. There's the Euclidean submarine right behind us.
Oh, no, Ted.
Yes, Mother.
Oh, but how? You must be wrong, Joan. You said this was the fastest sub on the island.
Yes, but do not forget that we lay at the bottom of the ocean, practically motionless for hours.
You're right. And every time we had to dive to get away from those bombs, every time we had to submerge to keep out of trouble, there was a sub gaining on us all the time.
Gee, one of those Euclideans plowing along our course, just waiting for a chance to catch up with us.
But how could they have been so sure of our course?
That is one occasion where the very perfection of Euclidean machinery has betrayed us. Any Euclidean submarine commander would know that we would be navigating with the automatic devices, and that our course would be the regular Euclidean course to Los Angeles. He could not fail to follow us.
And now, there's one of those submarines practically on top of us.
He must be pretty close, isn't he, Joan?
Within a mile, or his magnets would not hold us back.
Well, what are our chances?
To outrun that submarine, we have no chance. But he will never shorten the distance between us.
Well, that's all right here. But when we get to Los Angeles, what then?
Yes, Joan. What then? We can't possibly get out of this submarine and escape during the few minutes it will take him to catch up with us after we stop.
Well, I don't see what we can do about it. It's up to you, Joan.
I see no more chance of escaping that submarine than you do. That is, if we attempt to stop at Los Angeles.
Attempt to stop? Joan, we must stop there.
Then that other Euclidean submarine will stop with us. And what will happen then, I am afraid to say.
The Euclidean submarine carrying Mrs. Gregory, Tex Bradford, Jerry, and Joan is within 100 miles of Los Angeles. Less than 100 miles from home, and a new danger threatens them. They are losing speed. Joan has figured out that another submarine directly behind them is holding them back with magnets. This makes the end of their journey more hopeless than the beginning, as it would certainly be too bad if the Euclideans captured Mrs. Gregory and her party so near home. Jerry and Joan, the captain, and Mrs. Gregory are in the central control section of the submarine, watching the speed indicator.
Well, I guess you're right, Joan. We can't make over 30 knots anymore.
I know I am right.
But are you sure it's another submarine that's holding us back, Joan?
Well, we're certainly being held back. I don't know what else it could be.
It is another Euclidean submarine. And as all other boats are much slower than this one, it must be well commanded.
Hey, Joan, our girlfriend.
Girlfriend?
Yeah, you know. That Euclidean girl submarine commander?
I think not.
But it might be, dear. You said she was the finest submarine commander on the Magic Island.
Yes, and they'd send their best out on a job like this, wouldn't they?
Yes, except for the fact that the commander who befriended us may be under suspicion.
You mean suspicion of having helped us?
Exactly.
Gee, I'm sorry for her if old G-47 got any idea she'd try to help us a little.
Is there any way of finding out who is in command of that submarine?
Only radio communication, Mother, and it would do us no good.
No, nothing to be gained there. Unless we could find out how many of their scientists are on board.
You mean so we could have a better idea of what we're going to be up against when we get to Los Angeles?
Well, something like that, Jerry. I thought I might get an idea as to what they're most likely to do if I could find out who's on that boat.
That would make very little, if any, difference. The Euclideans are so well versed in all sciences that any of them could perform what tasks might be necessary to interfere with our landing.
And now, with that submarine so near at hand, we're not at all sure of landing.
We will land, but it will not be as simple a process as I had thought.
I don't see any chance of landing at all.
Oh, but we can figure out some way, Jerry. We haven't come over 4,000 miles in this submarine to give up that easy when we get to the end of our trip.
I don't see any hope of doing anything.
We will think of some plan before we approach the harbor.
But those men, though, whoever is back there in that other submarine, aren't just sitting around idly. They're planning, too.
Naturally. But we have an advantage over them.
I can't see it.
We may plan to do as we please, and may execute our plans on the spur of the moment. Our pursuers will find it necessary to forestall our plans, and that is most difficult.
You're right there, Joan. It's always a lot easier to think when your whole job is getting away from something than when you have to figure what the other fellow's going to do and stop you.
But if that submarine behind us can follow us right into the harbor by simply hanging onto us with magnets, we haven't even room for a plan.
You must not be too sure of that, Mother.
Isn't there some way we can lose that guy back there?
Not as long as his current holds out.
I have one possible way to halt the progress of that boat, but I do not want to use it except as a last resort.
It seems to me that we're not far from a last resort.
Yeah, and if you know any way to get rid of that fella, this looks like a swell time to do it.
I do not think the emergency is great enough.
Well, you know best about this equipment, Joan. But I'd say we didn't have any great amount of time to waste.
We're nearly to Los Angeles, Joan. We'll have to act very rapidly to get away from that boat with any margin of safety.
That is true. But it might be very dangerous to lose them too quickly.
I don't see why. If you're trying to get away from somebody, the sooner the better.
What if you escaped from them early enough to afford them the opportunity of making additional plans to recapture you?
Huh?
You mean that if we succeeded in losing our pursuers now, it would only give them another chance to catch us?
Precisely.
Well, I can understand that all right. Your idea is correct, Joan, providing we can stop them at the proper time.
That is, of course, our problem.
What do you propose to do, Joan?
Use our magnetic bombs on that other submarine and hold it motionless for a period of time sufficient to allow us to escape from this boat to the surface.
Magnetic bomb?
The same kind of bombs the Euclidean plane dropped on us?
Exactly the same type of bomb.
But, Joan, do we have any of those bombs?
To be sure, Mother. I have told you this submarine is fully equipped.
Well, I certainly don't see anything that looks like a supply of bombs.
Oh, never mind, Tex. They're probably just a lot of little pills like those big dinners we've been eating.
How large are those magnetic bombs, Joan?
Approximately 1 cubic inch.
1 inch?
Gee whiz. A bomb 1 inch square will hold a submarine still in the water?
If the bomb is placed near enough to the boat, certainly.
Golly, where are those things?
I will show you when the time comes to use them.
And how will we know when that time has come, dear?
Yes, Joan, we'd better know exactly what your plan is. And if, well, we have to act quickly, we won't be in the dark as to what we're supposed to be doing.
That submarine will not gain on us. They must remain at a distance of approximately 1 mile. That will give us ample protection when we enter the harbor.
You're going to wait till we get into the harbor to turn those bombs loose?
That might be dangerous to other shipping, Joan. We don't want to excite a lot of suspicion as to our movement.
In that event, we will release our bombs at an appointed place outside the harbor. That other submarine will be held powerless at that point for a sufficient length of time to permit us to escape.
I think you're right, Joan. The longer we wait, the more chance we'll have of holding that boat powerless at the time. Our safety will depend on the fact that it is powerless.
I guess that part of it's all right. But how about the men on the other boat having a little sense of their own?
What do you mean, Jerry?
Well, those fellows back there in that other boat aren't asleep. They'll soon figure out what we're going to do.
Naturally they will.
All right, then. What's going to stop them?
Stop them? What do you refer to?
Well, they've got some of those magnetic bombs, haven't they?
Naturally.
Then why can't they hold our boat powerless? Just as easy as we can hold theirs.
I wanted to ask that same thing, Jerry, but the rest of you have left me so far behind in all these technicalities that I was ashamed to ask.
Well, you needn't be, Pat. I can't see it any better than Jerry does. Those bombs will work both ways, won't they?
To be sure, the action of the bombs is identical from either ship. But the fact that those bombs are magnetic, that their contact is strongly magnetic, is our best protection.
Well, I still don't see it.
That other submarine is now sending out a magnetic beam, which is retarding our speed and allowing them to cling to our course. That is understood?
Oh, sure, we know that.
It's the action of the bombs that puzzles us, Joan.
The action of the bombs, as bombs, has nothing to do with this. They are merely small cubes of a highly compressed substance which will form a powerful magnetic field when released in salt water. But those bombs cannot be fired through the water for any appreciable distance.
Oh, now I'm beginning to get it. They couldn't possibly shoot those bombs far enough ahead to catch us. But we could drop them on our course for the other boat to run into.
Gee, that's simple, isn't it?
Most things are very simple, Jerry, after we understand them.
That is not all. Once we release a bomb, their magnetic beam will pull it directly to them at a terrific speed, and they will be held motionless almost instantly.
Well, you're right. That beam would pull the bomb to them. And more than that, it would prevent them sending a bomb after us.
Then let's turn one of those bombs loose right now.
No, Jerry.
Why not, Joan? We're getting closer to Los Angeles all the time. I should think our best move would be to lose that other submarine as soon as possible.
It would seem so, Mother, but for one thing.
Well, what's that?
The effects of the bomb would hardly last until we reach the harbor.
Oh, and that sub could take right out after us again, huh?
That's it, son, and Joan's right. The thing to do is to wait until we're nearly ready to anchor. Then release one of the bombs. And the magnetism is sure to hold the other boat powerless long enough to give us a chance to land.
Precisely, Captain Bradford.
Well, I can understand that all right. But it seems as if we're taking the enemy dangerously near to our camp.
Well, I guess that's about the best thing to do, though, Mrs. Gregory. At least we're going to be sure where he is if we've got him pinned down the water with one of those bombs.
Yes, in the meantime, though, we'd better be making some plans to get out of our own submarine and safely onto the land.
What would you suggest, Joan?
I think the captain should take charge of that. You are all more familiar with your resources than I am.
You're right, Joan. It's up to us on this end. We sure used you enough on that island.
We'll get ashore if Joan knows how to get to the surface from this thing.
I will attend to that.
Well, what can you do about landing us, Tex?
Well, I don't know yet. Joan, is there any objection to our using the radio now?
I think we could do no harm by using it, though the submarine following us will receive all messages we send.
But can we use it with that magnetic beam hanging onto it?
Transmission will be difficult.
We'll have to try it. There's no other way we can reach Johnson.
Well, what can we tell Johnson after we do reach him? You said you didn't want the story about this sub and the one following us to get nosed around yet.
I think I can do it with a code message.
Remember, Captain Bradford, that it will be dangerous to state a meeting place with Johnson. Your arrangements will undoubtedly be overheard by the other submarine and by Thales or some other Euclidean agent on the mainland.
Tex, how about one of our old courses? The airline charts we made when we were training pigeons and testing directional radio beams.
Just what I had in mind, Pat.
You mean Johnson knows those courses so well, you wouldn't have to give out any information to tell him where to meet us?
Right, Jerry.
That would be the solution to our problem.
How far out do you think we should anchor, Joan?
At least 5 miles.
Boy, that's a long swim.
You're not going to swim, and you know it, Jerry.
I hope not. But maybe there's something I thought of the rest of you forgot all about.
What's that, son?
Well, we're going to have to toss magnetic bombs around outside the harbor to hold this other boat still, aren't we?
I know of no other way to ensure our safety.
Then it looks to me like we're going to get caught by that same magnetism when a rescue boat comes out to meet us.
Tex, Jerry's right.
That had occurred to me.
It occurred to me, too, and I think I know the answer.
What, Tex?
We'll tell Johnson to bring out a sailboat and to leave everything metallic off of it.
Is it possible to get that information to Mr. Johnson without informing the scientists in the other submarine of your plan?
We'll have to try it, Joan. We haven't many choices left.
Hey, Joan, is it all right to use the radio now?
I will make the necessary adjustments and use a narrow directional beam. If your code is difficult enough, Captain, we may have a period of comparative safety while the Euclideans decipher it, though they are masters of that art also.
Those guys didn't miss a thing, did they?
Well, this code is really so simple that it isn't a code at all, just a prearranged set of signals. I doubt if anyone could ever figure them out.
That is well.
Is the radio ready now, Joan?
The transmission beam is set on 3 meters. You may proceed.
J24Y to J12C. J24Y to J12C. J24Y to J12C.
I hope we can raise Johnson quickly.
Oh, he might be taking time out for something to eat.
I would not be too impatient about your arrangements.
Why not?
It is daylight now. We may find it advisable to cruise outside the harbor until after dark.
By George, Joan, you're right. It would be a lot more simple for Johnson to pick us up safely after dark.
But if we cruise around waiting for darkness, what is to prevent that other submarine sending radio messages to Thales and interfering with our plans?
Yeah. Say, that wouldn't be so good.
They will not be able to use their radio from the other boat and hold us with their magnetic beam at the same time. It is possible for them to receive, but not to transmit messages.
Good. We'll get out of this yet. J24Y to J12C. J24Y to J12C. Say, Joan, were we discussing our plans with this microphone open?
No, Captain. I have kept it closed except for your actual signals to Johnson.
You sure think of everything, Joan. Now, everybody keep quiet, and I'll settle down to a long session of trying to raise Johnson. J24Y to J12C. J24Y to J12C. J24Y.
The Euclidean submarine with Captain Bradford, Mrs. Gregory, and Jerry and Joan on board is nearly into the channel off Los Angeles Harbor. The time is late afternoon. Captain Bradford is working frantically to get a radio message to Johnson at their home radio station. The other Euclidean submarine hangs on close behind them, holding back the faster boat and maintaining their own position by means of a magnetic beam. Joan stands ready to handle any emergency that may arise, and the captain continues to call the Gregory home station.
J12C. J24Y. J12C. Hello, J12C. Hello, Johnson. J24Y to J12C. Hello, J12C. Come in, J12C. Hello. Well, that seems to be that.
Oh, it doesn't look very good, does it, Tex?
Not yet. We'll have to raise Johnson sooner. We'll be in the harbor and that other boat right with us.
But we don't dare go in the harbor with our other boat after us.
No, Jerry. We can't go into the harbor with this submarine, much less with another following.
I think we may safely avoid that.
How?
Simply by cruising around near the harbor until you locate Johnson.
It's about all we can do.
Have we plenty of fuel for that, Joan?
We have more than enough fuel to cruise all night at this speed.
Well, it'd be better for us after dark and better for Johnson to try to rescue us.
Yes, if we can raise him at all.
I think you are too impatient, Captain Bradford.
Joan, dear, Tex has been trying for nearly an hour and not a sound from Johnson.
That is easily explained, is it not? When we last heard from Johnson, he warned us that his plans were in danger. And almost simultaneously, we heard the voice of Thales, chief electrician of Euclidia. Then, no more of Johnson.
That's what I'm worrying about. What did that fellow Thales do to Johnson?
Well, they sure spoiled Johnson's radio set. We know that.
And it would take some time to repair or replace that radio set, would it not?
But, Joan, why doesn't Johnson get to another set somewhere and start calling us again? You say you're sure Thales wouldn't hurt Johnson any.
It is not reasonable to think that he would harm the one man who is the connecting link with Captain Bradford.
Then, if Johnson is unharmed, as you believe, I agree with Jerry's question. Why doesn't Johnson get to another radio set and let us know what he's doing?
Well, I know one answer to that. Johnson is probably sure that we were getting his message at the time Thales interrupted it. And he will figure that Thales will be watching for another call from us. It might sound reasonable from Johnson's point of view that he could do us more harm than good by calling and forcing us to answer him.
I quite agree with you, Captain.
Well, so do I. But I don't see where that helps us very much.
Isn't there some way we could send a message to Johnson, telling him something more of our situation than he can possibly guess?
Boy, now would be a swell time to use those homing pigeons.
Yes, wouldn't it? But old G-47 has them safely hidden away on the island.
There is nothing to be gained by speculating on the impossible.
Can't you try to get Johnson to answer you, Tex?
I've been doing that for over an hour.
Well, I mean, try to tell him in code that we'll be floating around loose in the water off San Pedro after dark tonight. That should get some kind of an answer out of him.
It would also let the Euclideans know a great deal about our plans.
Now listen, Joan. Just listen to me for a minute. You're scared to death of old G-47 and the rest of the Euclideans on the Magic Island. Well, I'm not saying they can't do plenty of tricks, but we may just as well be prisoners back on the island if we've got to run around the bottom of the ocean in a submarine for the rest of our lives.
And I feel very much the same way, Jerry. We took a chance when we even set out to look for that island, and we've taken many chances in escaping twice. And I can't think of anything that would make the Euclideans more angry than stealing this submarine. Well, after we've gone that far, and now that we're within an hour's run of Los Angeles, I think it's time to take one more big chance and tell Johnson to answer us.
Well, you were the boss, Pat. This was your party when we started out. You believed you'd find Joan, and you were right in that. You think this is the time to press our luck? Here we go.
I am heartily in accord with your wishes. I will operate the microphone and the directional beam for you, Captain.
All right, I'll try Wilmington. Will you set your beam, Joan?
I'm doing so now.
I wish just once we could ask you to do something, and you'd not find you already having it half done.
On Euclidia, we are taught to think very rapidly.
Well, don't forget it. It might come in mighty handy before this night's over.
Captain Bradford.
Yes, Joan?
Before you make another attempt to contact Johnson, I should like to make a suggestion.
Go to it.
We will use our magnetic bombs to hold the other submarine powerless while we escape from this one.
Yes, we understand that, Joan.
Then it is absolutely necessary that Johnson come out to rescue us in a boat made entirely of non-metallic materials.
That's right. And if he doesn't, well, he'll get magnetized along with the rest of us, and he'll be in it just as bad as we are.
But, Joan, you said that the magnetic beam from the other submarine would draw the bombs to them, and that we wouldn't be affected by them.
That is true. We will not be affected by magnets from the other submarine.
Then where can the magnetism come from that would harm Johnson's boat?
You have forgotten the plane flying over us.
Golly whiskers.
Oh, Tex, that plane.
I sure forgot it for the minute.
But we don't see the shadow on the water now. Oh, are you sure it's still following us?
Positive.
I don't see the shadow.
The sun is now much lower. The plane is undoubtedly directly over us, but its shadow is a great distance, probably several hundred feet ahead of us.
You think the plane is still right over us?
You may believe that I know that, Captain. The Euclidean plane is directly over us.
But he can't see us in the water, can he?
Easily. His prism reflectors will pierce a far greater depth of water than we now maintain.
That's not so good. He can always drop some of those magnetic bombs and anchor any boat Johnson brings out, even a wooden one with a small motor.
Precisely.
But after dark, what good will his reflectors do then?
Then he will depend on his magnetic compass. The beam from the submarine holding fast astern of this boat naturally ends at this boat. Even an ordinary compass in an ordinary airplane would show whether the pilot was over the end of that beam.
Then then that plane will be flying over us, even when Johnson comes out to rescue us tonight.
Right so, Pat.
But what will he do to us?
We will come to no harm if we escape the magnetism. I have explained that Violus has no place with the Euclideans.
Oh, I hope you're right.
Me too.
Well, right or wrong, we're going to have to take a chance on it. Now, everybody keep quiet. I'll see what I can do with this radio. Ready, Joan? 3 meters.
3 meters. Ready, Captain.
J24Y to J12C. J24Y to J12C. Get this, J12C. Answer at once. J12C. Answer J24Y at once. Regardless of reason for your silence. Answer at once. J24Y calling J12C. Answer at once.
He may not even be hearing you.
Oh, keep trying, Tex. We've got to raise him very soon, or it'll be too late.
Right, Pat. Joan, we may need more than one wavelength. There's no way of knowing what sort of set, if any, Johnson has now. Will you try various bands? Change the set over after I complete each call and wait a few seconds for an answer?
I will make the changes, Captain. Ready?
Ready. J24Y to J12C. J24Y to J12C. Answer at once, J12C. J24Y to J12C. J24Y to J12C. Answer at once, J12C. J24Y to J12C. J24Y to J12C. Answer at once, J12C.
J24Y. Go ahead.
It's Johnson.
Oh, Tex, it is.
Silence.
J24Y to J12C. Get every word of this. May not be able to repeat. Using only 3/4 of our power. Ready. Copy. Remember. The wooden vessel. When you bring formula to the fusing point. Greatest danger. Intermediate point. When you see one. Ingredient. Precipitate. Wholly black. Move fast. Limited time. That's all. No questions. J24Y to J12C. That's all.
J12C. J24Y. Got your message. We'll follow instructions. We'll have formula completed when you call for it. That is all. J12C.
Well, he got it. Every word of it.
Did you actually send Johnson a code message then, Captain?
I certainly did. A little slow about it, as I had to figure it out and jot it down as I went along, but he got it.
That's more than I did. You sure think fast, Tex.
I told you, Joan. Tex and Johnson are the 2 finest men in the world on extemporaneous code messages.
A few months ago, I would have questioned that, as the Euclideans claim they are the finest. But now, I believe you.
Well, I didn't get anything out of it.
All I got was the 3/4.
Careful, Pat. Joan, is it safe to talk now?
Perfectly safe, Captain. I have insulated us against all possible communication.
All right, then here's the message. Now, look. I told Johnson we were using only 3/4 of our power.
And that means the 3rd and 4th words in the message.
That's right, Pat. You're not so slow yourself. And here's the message. Now, I'll read it all. Then just the 3rd and 4th words. Remember the wooden vessel when you bring formula to the fusing point. Greatest danger, intermediate point, when you see one ingredient precipitate. Wholly black. Move fast. Limited time. Now, did you get it?
Not me.
You concealed it well, Captain. What is the message?
Well, now watch. I'll cross out every first and second word and read what's left. Wooden vessel, bring formula, fusing point, intermediate point, C1, wholly black, limited time.
I got it. Johnson's going to meet us halfway with a wooden boat as soon as it gets dark.
Oh, splendid work, Tex.
It is indeed excellent, Captain Bradford. But I fail to understand the appointed place.
Well, intermediate point means halfway. And C1 means our old pigeon training course. Course number 1 to Catalina.
Oh, that covers it, Tex. Johnson will be prepared to meet us with a sailboat halfway to Catalina on our old training course as soon as it's completely dark.
That's it, Pat. I don't see how it can miss.
Oh, it seems almost too much. We're within a few minutes of the harbor, and Johnson will be out to meet us. And in a few hours, it'll be all over.
Remember that it is still daylight, and we have several hours before the appointed time.
That's a swell thing to bring up, just when I was feeling good. We've got to chase around for hours with that other sub hanging on our tail.
Yes, I had nearly forgotten that.
No, I hadn't, but it doesn't matter one way or the other. We're in no danger from that boat now.
What was that?
I didn't notice anything.
Neither did I.
Silence.
I heard it then, all right.
That is another musical note from Euclidia. Octavo is near our keynote with his beam. We must put on